I never thought a single moment could make the life I knew shatter into pieces. My mornings had always started with the smell of coffee, the gentle warmth of sunlight spilling through our bedroom curtains, and David's quiet humming as he got ready for work. We had been married for 6 years, and our life in Maplewood, a quiet suburban town, was the kind most people envied, not because it was perfect, but because it was ordinary in the most comforting way. That morning, I woke up to the sound of the alarm on my phone, exactly at 6:30 a.m., and noticed David wasn't in bed. That wasn't unusual. He sometimes left early for meetings, but something felt off. The hum of the coffee maker was missing. The soft rustle of the newspaper he always skimmed at the kitchen table wasn't there. I rubbed my eyes and called out, "David." My voice echoed in the empty house. No response. I shrugged it off. Maybe he had an early meeting I forgot about. Maybe he left a note, but there was none. Only the empty kitchen, the scent of last night's dinner lingering faintly. My unease began to grow as the minutes passed. I checked his car gone. I checked his phone voicemail only. By 8 a.m., a gnawing fear had settled in my chest. He never left without telling me where he was going, even if it was a quick errand. I called his office. His assistant answered, but her voice was hesitant. David. He didn't come in today. He didn't call either. My heart stopped. Not at all. I asked, my voice trembling. Not at all, Emily. He hasn't been in since yesterday afternoon, and nobody's seen him. We thought you'd know something. Yesterday afternoon. My mind raced. I tried to retrace the last 24 hours. The last conversations, the last moments we shared. Everything seemed normal. We'd watched a movie together. We'd talked about weekend plans. He'd kissed me goodnight. Nothing out of the ordinary. The hours passed like hours in a nightmare. I called friends. Sophie, my closest confidant, picked up after the third ring. "Emily, what's wrong?" she asked immediately, sensing my panic even over the phone. "David, he's gone. He didn't come home last night. He's not answering his phone. And nobody's seen him." My voice was shaky, breaking. Sophie was silent for a long moment, then said, Okay, breathe. Have you checked the hospital? The police?" I hadn't. The thought hadn't crossed my mind. Panic had gripped me so tightly that rational action seemed impossible. I called the police first. The officer on duty took my information and assured me they would start a missing persons report. But I knew deep down that the first 24 hours were critical, and David had already been gone longer. By midday, the house felt colder than usual. I wandered from room to room, as if hoping he might suddenly appear, laughing and holding his coffee mug, teasing me for worrying. But the house remained silent, empty, almost hostile. My phone buzzed endlessly, messages from friends, family, colleagues, everyone asking if I had heard anything. I hadn't. Then, a strange thought struck me. Had he planned this? Was it possible that he left? The idea seemed absurd, and yet the more I tried to push it away, the more it took root. Was our marriage in trouble and I hadn't noticed? Had he grown tired of this life? Of me? The thought twisted in my stomach like a live thing. Sophie arrived in the late afternoon. She hugged me tightly, and I felt the first tear slip down my cheek. "He wouldn't just leave," she said softly, but her eyes mirrored my fear. "Not David. He's not that kind of man." "I don't know anymore," I whispered. I don't know what to think." We decided to check everywhere he might have gone. His favorite coffee shop, the park where he jogged, his parents' house. Every call, every street corner, every familiar place only deepened the void. Nothing. It was as if he had evaporated from existence. By the evening, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across our living room. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen. Sophie sat beside me, holding my hand. "We'll figure this out," she said. But I couldn't convince myself. Every tick of the clock was a hammer pounding on my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the wind brushing against the windows made me jump. I imagined 1,000 terrible things: accidents, kidnappings, secret troubles. My imagination ran wild, fueled by fear and the unknown. The next day, I went to David's office again. His coworkers were puzzled, concerned, and some even fearful. One of them, James, his closest friend at work, finally whispered the words I dreaded: "Emily, no one has seen him. Some people think he might have been in an accident, but there's no evidence anywhere, nothing." I felt my knees weaken. I had to sit down on the cold office floor. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time I saw him. The last words we exchanged, they seemed so ordinary, so mundane. How could something so normal lead to this nightmare? Days passed, 2 full days of searching, calling, worrying. Every phone call, every small hope, crushed by silence. And then, just when the despair felt unbearable, the front door opened. David stood there, carrying nothing, looking tired, disheveled, but alive. I ran to him without thinking. My arms wrapped around him, as if holding him could make the world right again. He looked at me, eyes full of guilt, exhaustion, and something I couldn't immediately name. "Emily, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "For 2 days I thought you were gone forever," I whispered. Where were you?" "Protect me." "From what?" My voice rose, trembling with a mix of relief and anger. "I can't explain everything right now. I couldn't risk losing you while dealing with this. Please, just trust me." The room felt heavy with tension, every word weighted with unspoken truths. I wanted to yell, to scream, to demand answers, but all I could do was hold him, feel that he was truly there, alive, and somehow real. As the night stretched on, I realized that the questions, the fear, the disbelief of it mattered in the same way anymore. He was home, and even though the truth was hidden, even though the reasons were unclear, this reunion, fragile and raw, was the first step toward healing. The morning sunlight felt harsh as it poured into the living room, lighting up the empty spaces where David had always been. It had been another sleepless night, my mind spinning endlessly with questions I had no answers to. My coffee had gone cold before I could take more than a sip. Every shadow in the house felt menacing, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets about my husband's disappearance. I couldn't sit still. Sitting only made the emptiness louder, each second more unbearable. I grabbed my phone and began the ritual I had developed over the past 2 days, calling his friends, coworkers, anyone who might have seen him. First, I called James, David's closest friend at work. His voice, usually casual and teasing, trembled slightly when he answered. "Emily, still no sign of him?" "No, James. I've checked everywhere. His office, the park, the cafe he goes to every morning. Nothing. It's like he vanished into thin air," I said, my voice cracking. "I wish I could help more," he replied, "but I haven't seen him since yesterday morning. He didn't mention any plans. I don't know what to think." That silence after his words was unbearable. I imagined every possible scenario: car accidents, sudden illnesses, even the unthinkable kidnapping. My chest tightened, and a cold sweat covered my skin. I had to find him. I refused to let panic consume me. By midday, I had expanded my search. I drove to his office, talked to his manager, asked the receptionist to check security footage. They were sympathetic, but ultimately unhelpful. There was no record of David leaving the office unusually, and no one had seen him take his car. Every dead end only deepened the gnawing sense of fear. Sophie was my anchor throughout this ordeal. She had taken time off work to stay with me, helping to coordinate calls, providing practical advice, and, most importantly, just being there when I felt like collapsing. "I don't understand," I said to her one afternoon as we sat on the couch. The room heavy with the scent of wilted flowers from the porch. He wouldn't just leave. We've never had a mean. Nothing in our life would make him disappear like this. Sophie squeezed my hand. I know, Emily. But maybe he thought he had no other choice. Some emergencies. People hide them to protect the ones they love. Her words made sense, but also terrified me. What kind of emergency could keep him from contacting me for 2 days? And why hadn't he left even the tiniest hint? My mind ran through possibilities. From financial troubles to hidden secrets, and each thought made me shiver. I decided to take a more methodical approach. I went to the places David frequented regularly, hoping for a clue, a familiar face, a piece of clothing left behind, a note. At the coffee shop, the barista shook her head apologetically. No one's seen him, Emily. He didn't come in for 2 days. I wandered the park where he jogged every morning. The crisp autumn air stung my cheeks, but I didn't care. I searched the paths, the benches, the small pond at the center. Nothing. It was as if he had vanished completely. The 3rd day, exhaustion had begun to take its toll. My movements were sluggish, my thoughts tangled, and every sound made my heart jump. A stray dog barking across the street made me nearly cry from sheer anxiety. I felt desperate, but a stubborn spark inside refused to give up. I knew that David was out there somewhere, and I needed to find him. I remembered his parents lived only a few blocks away. Perhaps he had gone to see them. When I arrived, I was met with worried faces and anxious hugs. His mother, Mrs. Johnson, wrung her hands nervously. Emily, we haven't seen him. He didn't call us, either. We thought you might know something. Nothing, I said, my voice tight. I haven't heard a word. Please, if you remember anything at all, let me know immediately. We spent the afternoon combing through old text messages and emails, searching for any clue. David's messages were ordinary mundane chats with colleagues, jokes with friends, reminders to pay bills, but one message, a small, cryptic line from 2 days ago, caught my attention. It simply read, I need to take care of something. I'll explain soon. No time, no explanation, nothing that could tell me what something meant. My stomach churned. Something serious had happened. That much was clear, and whatever it was, David had kept me completely in the dark. I began to question everything. Had I really known him at all? I flipped through old photographs, memories of birthdays, vacations, quiet nights at home. Every smile in those pictures now seemed tainted with doubt. Had he been carrying a secret all along? I shook my head violently. No, I refused to think that way. I had to believe that he had his reasons. That night, I stayed awake in the dark living room. The sound of the clock ticking was unbearable. Every passing minute was a reminder of his absence. Every shadow a reflection of my fear. Sophie fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from keeping vigil. But I couldn't. My thoughts were a storm, spinning in endless circles. Where could he have gone? What emergency could be so urgent that he couldn't even leave a note? Was he hurt? Was he safe? The next day, I decided to involve the police more actively. Detective Harris was patient, listening to my frantic explanations and retracing David's movements. He reassured me that they were doing everything they could, but as his words sank in, I realized the terrifying truth. For now, I was alone in my fear. The police could help search, but they couldn't ease the anxiety, the gnawing dread that had taken over my life. Then, a small clue arrived that changed everything. My phone rang, displaying an unknown number. I answered immediately. Emily? A male voice said, careful, almost hesitant. Yes, who is this? My heart raced. It's James, David's friend. I found something. He explained that David's credit card had been used in a small town about 50 miles away, a place neither of us had reason to visit. My mind reeled. Why there? And why without telling me? We rushed there, following the trail, desperate for answers. The town was quiet, sleepy, and the coffee shop he had visited confirmed James' information. David had been there, yes, but again, no explanation for why. My frustration and fear collided. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I also had to keep moving forward. I had to follow the trail, no matter where it led. As the sun began to set on the 4th day since his disappearance, my phone buzzed again. Another message, this one from David himself. "Emily, please wait. I'll explain everything when I get home. Trust me." The words should have been comforting, but instead, they made my chest tighten. Trust him. After 2 days of silence, after endless worry, after imagining every terrible scenario, could I trust him again? I spent the evening pacing the small living room, Sophie beside me, both of us unsure whether to feel relief or panic. Every tick of the clock felt like a countdown to the truth, whatever it might be. That night, I finally allowed myself a few moments of reflection. I thought about our marriage, the life we had built together, and the person I loved. Even in the midst of fear and uncertainty, I realized something crucial. My love for David was still unwavering, and no matter what had happened, I had to be ready to hear the truth, even if it shattered everything I thought I knew. And so, with the dawn of the 5th day approaching, I waited. For the first time, I felt a strange mixture of fear, hope, and anticipation. Whatever awaited me, I knew that life as I had known it was about to change forever. The days stretched endlessly, and the weight of David's absence settled into the very walls of our home. Each morning, I woke to silence. Each evening the same emptiness, and every night, the shadows grew longer. Pressing against me, I tried to busy myself with chores, work, even walks around the neighborhood, but nothing could distract me from the gnawing fear that had taken over my life. Sophie tried to comfort me, but even her bright presence couldn't fill the void. "Emily," she said one morning, as we sat at the kitchen table, "you need to eat something. You're running yourself into exhaustion." "I can't," I whispered, staring at the cold oatmeal in front of me. "I can't eat, I can't sleep, I can't stop thinking about him." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I know, but you have to try. You have to stay strong, for yourself and for him." I wanted to believe her. I truly did. But the truth was that every fiber of my being was fraying. My mind spun endlessly, replaying every moment of the past week. How had it come to this? How had David, the man I had trusted with my heart and soul, disappeared without a word? I remembered the night before he vanished. We had cooked dinner together, laughing over small things, the way he tried to flip a pancake and missed, the way he teased me about burning the garlic bread. It had been normal, ordinary, perfect. How could such normalcy be shattered in a single instant? And yet, as I sat alone in the living room, memories began to twist in my mind. Small moments I had brushed off now seemed suspicious. The way he had looked at his phone that night, the slight hesitation in his voice when I asked about a meeting, the hurried goodbye kiss. Had I missed the signs? Had I been blind to something that was quietly brewing beneath the surface of our marriage? The thought made my stomach twist. I loved David, I knew I did, but fear was clouding my judgment. Was this love enough to hold us together if the truth, whatever it was, turned out to be something I couldn't forgive? In the days following his disappearance, I also began to confront my own fears, the insecurities I had buried deep within. Was I enough for him? Had I been too focused on my own life, too caught up in my work, too absorbed in the routines of marriage, to notice the subtle signs that something was wrong? These questions haunted me, keeping sleep at bay. I found myself wandering through our home, touching objects that now seemed to hold echoes of the past. The couch where we had curled up for movies, the kitchen counter where we had laughed over burnt pancakes, the bedroom where we had shared whispered conversations in the dark. Each touch was a reminder of what I feared might be lost forever. Then, There were the phone calls and messages that offered no answers, only more uncertainty. James had texted again, updating me that David's credit card had been used in that distant town. But even this clue brought no clarity, only more questions. What was he doing there? Why hadn't he told me? Was he in danger? I began to spiral, imagining every possible scenario, each one more terrifying than the last. Had he been hurt? Was he trapped somewhere? Or worse, had he chosen to leave me, to abandon our life together? The very idea was unbearable, yet my mind could not dismiss it. Sophie noticed the change in me. "Emily," she said one evening, as we sat in the dim light of the living room, "you can't let fear control you. You need to remember who you are. You need to hold on to hope, even if it's hard." "I don't know if I can," I admitted, tears spilling down my cheeks. "I feel like I'm losing him, and I don't even know why. I don't know who he is anymore, or if he's the man I married." Her embrace was gentle, yet firm. "The man you married is still there, Emily. You just haven't seen him yet. You will, and when you do, you'll understand everything." But understanding seemed impossibly far away. Every hour that passed without David's return felt like a small fracture in my heart. I tried to distract myself with work, with cleaning, with anything that would occupy my mind, but the fear was relentless. And then there were the memories, both beautiful and painful, that refused to let me go. I remembered the day we first met. In a small coffee shop, his awkward smile, the way he had spilled his coffee on the table and apologized a dozen times. I remembered our first date, the way he had nervously held my hand, the way we had laughed at each other's awkwardness. I remembered our wedding day, the sun shining through the chapel windows, the way he had looked at me as if I were the only person in the world. All of these memories now felt fragile, delicate shards of a life I feared might be broken beyond repair. I questioned myself constantly. Had I taken him for granted? Had I ignored signs that he was struggling, that he needed me in ways I hadn't noticed? The more I reflected, the more I realized that my love for David was intertwined with fear, guilt, and doubt. I loved him deeply, but I also feared losing him. Feared being abandoned, feared the unknown. And yet, beneath all of this turmoil, a stubborn hope remained, a tiny, persistent flame that refused to be extinguished. On the fourth night of his disappearance, I sat alone by the window, watching the stars glimmer faintly in the dark sky. The world outside seemed indifferent to my suffering, moving on in quiet, relentless motion. And yet, I felt a strange connection to it. Perhaps life was like this, sometimes unpredictable, sometimes cruel, sometimes incomprehensible, but always moving forward, always demanding that we endure, that we hold on, that we survive. It was then that I realized something crucial. I could not control David's actions, nor could I control the circumstances that had led to his disappearance. What I could control, however, was myself, my response, my resilience, my determination to seek the truth. I would not allow fear to paralyze me. I would not allow doubt to consume the love that still burned within me. The next morning, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose. I would continue searching, continue questioning, continue hoping. Every call, every message, every step I took brought me closer to understanding, closer to finding him, closer to confronting the truth. And as I prepared to step out into the crisp morning air, I felt a subtle shift, a whisper of something waiting just beyond the horizon. A hint that the mystery of David's disappearance, the tension that had gripped my heart, was on the verge of unraveling. Little did I know, the truth was far more complex, far more unexpected, and far more life-changing than I could have ever imagined. The day began like any other, with the soft morning light creeping through the blinds and casting stripes across the wooden floor. But I knew, somewhere deep inside, that today would be different. Something in the air felt charged, almost electric, as if the universe had shifted while I slept. My heart thudded with both anticipation and dread. a conflicted rhythm that mirrored my emotions over the past days. I was still in my pajamas, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee, when the doorbell rang. My stomach lurched. Could it be? I rushed to the door, heart pounding in my chest like a drum. And there he was, David, standing there, looking exhausted, disheveled, but very much alive. His eyes, normally so warm and familiar, held a storm of guilt, worry, and something else I couldn't immediately identify. Relief, perhaps, at finally being home. David? My voice broke, barely audible. I took a step toward him, then another, until I closed the gap and wrapped my arms around him, holding him as if I could prevent the world from tearing us apart. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice rough from fatigue. "I'm here." Tears streamed down my face. For 2 days, I had lived in a state of constant fear, imagining every possible scenario, every worst-case outcome. And now, standing before me, he was real, flesh and blood, here in our home. My knees felt weak, and I sank onto the floor with him, clinging to the only certainty left in my life, him. After what felt like an eternity, I pulled back slightly, enough to look into his eyes. "David, why? Why did you disappear? Why didn't you call? Didn't you know I would be?" Worried, terrified. His gaze dropped to the floor, his hands trembling slightly as he ran them through his hair. "Emily, I can explain. I didn't mean to scare you. I didn't want to, truly. But I had no choice." My anger flared, mingled with relief and confusion. No choice. 2 days, David, 2 days without a word. You can't just vanish and expect me to understand. "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have told you. I wanted to. Every moment I was gone, I thought about telling you, but I couldn't. Not then. Please, just hear me out." I took a shaky breath and nodded, forcing myself to sit up straighter. "Okay, tell me." David began slowly, carefully, as if each word was a fragile piece of glass he feared breaking. 2 days ago, I received a call from my sister. "She's in trouble, Emily. Serious trouble. She was in an accident. She's pregnant, and something went wrong. The doctor said she needed immediate attention, and I had to go. I didn't want you to worry, so I thought I could handle it quietly. Get her help, and be back before you even knew." My heart constricted. His sister. Pregnant. Accident. The pieces began to fall into place, but the intensity of fear and anger clashed in my chest. "David, you couldn't call me. 2 days. You left me to panic, to imagine everything." "I know," he whispered, shame in his eyes. "And I hate myself for it. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I only caused more pain. I wanted to shield you from worry, from fear, from the truth. But it was a mistake. A terrible mistake." I sat in stunned silence, the flood of emotions overwhelming. Relief at knowing he was safe. Anger at being left in the dark. Fear for his sister and her unborn child. And love-mints. Unyielding love that refused to be diminished even in the face of betrayal. I was scared, I admitted finally, my voice trembling. Scared that something had happened to you. Scared that you didn't care enough to tell me. Scared that our life, everything we've built, could unravel in an instant. David reached for my hand, his touch tentative, almost pleading. "Emily, everything we've built, everything we have, it matters more than anything in the world to me. I would never let anything destroy it, not even my own fears, my own mistakes." Tears blurred my vision, and I squeezed his hand tightly. "Then, don't ever do this again. Promise me, David. No more disappearing. No more secrets. No more leaving me in the dark." "I promise," he said, his voice firm now, full of conviction. "I promise, Emily. From now on, no matter what happens, you'll always know. You and our life together come first." We sat together in silence for a long time, simply holding on to one another, letting the warmth of our reunion wash over the tension and fear of the past 2 days. And slowly, the anger ebbed, replaced by understanding. I realized that while his actions had been misguided, his intentions had been pure. He had acted out of love, flawed though it may have been, trying to protect me from worry while facing a family emergency he hadn't anticipated. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across our living room, I reflected on the fragility of life and the importance of trust, communication, and forgiveness. David's disappearance had tested our marriage in ways I had never imagined. But it had also reminded me of why I loved him, why our bond was worth fighting for, and why sometimes, even in the darkest moments, love could endure. That night, we spoke for hours, recounting the past days, sharing fears, regrets, and small details of our separate experiences. We laughed softly, cried together, and slowly, the chasm that had formed between us began to close. And though the memory of those 2 terrifying days would remain with me forever, I knew that we had emerged stronger, our bond tempered by the fire of fear and uncertainty. I had learned that love was not just about presence, but about trust, understanding, and the courage to confront the unknown together. For the first time in days, I slept peacefully, knowing that David was home, that he was safe, and that together, we could face whatever challenges life might throw our way. The days following David's return were unlike anything I had experienced in years. The fear, panic, and uncertainty that had gripped me for nearly a week began to slowly dissolve, replaced by a cautious sense of calm. Yet, beneath this calm, there remained a fragile thread of unease. Trust, once shaken, takes time to rebuild, and I knew that our journey toward healing had only just begun. David and I decided to take it slow. No rushed conversations, no unrealistic expectations, just small steps to restore what had been fractured. We spent the mornings together, drinking coffee at the kitchen table, laughing over the simplest things, how he still couldn't flip a pancake without disaster, how I insisted on burning garlic bread just to tease him. These small rituals, ordinary and mundane, were a reminder of the life we had almost lost and the love that had carried us through. "I don't ever want to feel those 2 days again," I said one morning, the sunlight streaming across the counter. I watched him carefully, noting the tiredness under his eyes, the weight of guilt he still carried. "I know," he replied softly. "Neither do I, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure you never have to." The first challenge was communication. For years, we had assumed that love alone would carry us through misunderstandings, but those 2 days had shown us how quickly assumptions could spiral into fear. We began to talk more openly, sharing even the smallest thoughts and feelings, the things we might have previously brushed aside. It wasn't easy. Sometimes, old fears and lingering anger surfaced. I would ask questions that he struggled to answer, and he would offer explanations that didn't quite satisfy the anxiety that had built up inside me. But slowly, piece by piece, the walls we had built between us began to crumble. And with each small victory, our connection grew stronger, more resilient. One afternoon, Sophie came over to check on us. She smiled knowingly as she watched us sit together on the couch, hands intertwined, speaking softly to one another. "You look different," she said. "It's like the 2 of you have changed, in a good way." I nodded, realizing she was right. The ordeal had stripped away complacency, had forced us to confront our deepest fears, had reminded us of the fragility and preciousness of life. We were different now, not in ways that could be easily measured, but in ways that mattered most. Our hearts were aligned, our love tempered by understanding and forgiveness. David's sister, the reason behind his sudden disappearance, also became a bridge for healing. We visited her together, ensuring she was safe and supported during her pregnancy. Witnessing David's dedication, his selfless concern for his family, reminded me of why I had fallen in love with him in the first place. It wasn't just his charm or humor, it was his unwavering sense of responsibility, his capacity for care even when it put him at risk. Through this experience, I also began to reflect on myself. I realized that love is not just about presence or gestures. It's about patience, understanding, and resilience. I learned that anger is natural, but forgiveness is a choice, and that sometimes the bravest act is to trust again, even after being hurt. We began to plan small adventures together, reconnecting not just as husband and wife, but as partners navigating a world that had suddenly revealed how fragile and unpredictable life could be. Weekend trips, quiet walks in the park, even ordinary grocery shopping became opportunities to reaffirm our bond, to celebrate the mundane moments that now felt extraordinary. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, David took my hand and held it gently. "Emily," he said, his voice soft, "I don't think I ever fully appreciated what it means to be loved until I saw what losing you might feel like." Tears welled in my eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude, not fear. "And I don't think I understood how much trust truly matters until I almost lost it," I replied. We sat in silence for a while, letting the quiet speak for the emotions words could not fully capture. The world outside moved on, indifferent to our struggles. But inside, we had found a new rhythm, a renewed sense of partnership and intimacy. As weeks turned into months, the memory of those terrifying 2 days remained, but it no longer held the power to dominate my thoughts. It became a chapter, a reminder of what could be lost, what could be survived, and what could be gained through resilience and love. We marked each anniversary, each small milestone, with a quiet acknowledgement of the strength we had found in one another. Emily Johnson, the woman who had spent nights pacing and worrying, grew stronger. She learned that fear is a teacher, that love is a labor, and that the heart has an extraordinary capacity for forgiveness and endurance. And David Johnson, the man who had vanished for reasons he thought were noble, learned the importance of transparency, of trust, and the profound consequences of leaving loved ones in the dark. Together, we rebuilt our life not perfectly, but authentically. We learned that marriage is not just about grand gestures, but about the quiet consistency of being present, being honest, and being willing to face the storms together. On a quiet evening, long after the chaos had faded, we sat side by side on the couch, the room filled with the soft hum of the heater and the scent of blooming flowers from the porch. David reached over and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "No more secrets," he whispered, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "No more disappearing acts," I replied, leaning into him. And in that moment, I felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by hope, trust, and the enduring warmth of a love that had been tested and had survived. Life, I realized, was unpredictable and often terrifying. But it was also precious, filled with moments worth holding on to. Moments that reminded us why we fight for love, why we forgive, and why we continue to trust, even after fear has touched our hearts. As the night settled in, I reflected quietly on everything we had endured. The ordeal had changed us, yes, but it had also strengthened us. And in that quiet reflection, I knew, without a shadow of doubt, that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, hand in hand, hearts aligned, and spirits unbroken. Because love, true love, is not measured by perfection or absence of pain. It is measured by endurance, by the courage to forgive, and by the unwavering decision to face life together, no matter what comes. And in the end, after the fear, the panic, the tears, and the uncertainty, that was the lesson that would stay with me forever. That was the truth that would guide our hearts through the years to come.